Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Justin Talk Sports, or at least my first attempt at this. Just going to look to take a recap run through what was a crazy and bizarre Week 8 of the NFL season and dive a little bit into Game 5 of the World Series as well. We still have a series. It'll head back to Houston on Tuesday. My goal with this channel is going to be to just do this, I don't know, hopefully 3 or 4 times a week. We'll definitely at some point this week I'll be going recapping the college football week that was and look what we've got to look ahead to in the future. We've got the final month of the regular season. Really, I just want to shoot 15-minute videos or so. That's a combination of a recap and an analysis. And really, I'm as big a sports nut as anybody I know, and I know there's a lot of them out there. And try to condense all of the craziness and everything that goes on in a typical day and a typical week in the sports world, and condense it into a video that people can watch pretty quickly and get an idea for what's going on. So follow me along on this journey. The quality is going to get better, I promise. Hopefully my room's not going to be as messy, and hopefully things will just continue to get better as I figure out what I'm doing here. So if you want to hop along for the ride, please do. But this is going to be fun. We're starting with NFL season week 8. Had a crazy game on Thursday night. Green Bay and Arizona went down to the wire. One of the more bizarre interceptions you'll ever see to lose the game. Kyler Murray, who probably is everyone's MVP pick at this point, takes Arizona down the field to win the game at the end. A field goal would tie it. And then the crazy interception has A.J. Green, who him and DeAndre Hopkins together, I mean, that's been as good a wide receiver duo as any in the league. You had Arizona had A.J. Green, and you had Tennessee had Julio Jones, and they seem to be very similar receiver acquisitions in the offseason. One arguably has turned out better than the other. Green probably performing better than Jones, but at the same time, both teams have been doing really, really well, performing ahead of expectations. Throws to A.J. Green at the goal line. A.J. Green doesn't see the ball at all. Green Bay gets the interception, and what looked like at least a sure overtime turns into a Green Bay victory, which gives us a big mess now at the top of the NFC. Arizona, Green Bay, LA, and Dallas all with one loss, with Dallas winning tonight as well on Sunday Night Football. So that gives you a 4-way tie atop the NFC. You're going to have quite a battle both for the NFC West and for the number 1 seed, which now we're in the second year of this new playoff format, is going to be the only team that gets a bye and gets that home field advantage, and gets to skip that wild card round. All that's going to be interesting. The one thing that's really interesting is the gap right now between kind of the halves of the NFC, where you have a very clear Arizona, LA, Dallas, and Green Bay all have Super Bowl aspirations, and these are 4 teams that are off to fantastic starts to their season. With just one loss at the moment. And then you have the rest of the NFC. I have been saying for weeks now, and will continue to say, that Seattle is still in a fine playoff position. And of course, there's a bit of homer bias to that. But see, we're fine. And that's because of the bottom of the NFC playoff picture, where you've got a Saints team that now is minus Jameis Winston, most likely for the season, after Sean Payton called it a significant knee injury today, which is coach speak for he blew his ACL out, but we're going to wait till the MRI tomorrow. Which is incredibly unfortunate, because he was one of probably at least one of the players I was enjoying watching the most and was the most interested in this season, because his story coming back from 2 seasons ago, arguably an incredibly productive season that was also one of the funniest you'll ever see, with the 30 touchdown, 30 interception mark that no one's going to catch in a long, long time. And then not playing at all last season, going from being a 30 touchdown guy to not playing, and then back into a starting position. That's something that you won't see very often, and so that was really fun to kind of follow. That's come to a halt. You've got a New Orleans team now that had to play an entire game and somehow beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Trevor Siemian at quarterback. So that's going to be fascinating to watch, as I assume they're going to stick with him. Taysom Hill has been out the last couple of weeks. When he comes back, what Sean Payton decides to do instead of quarterbacks is going to be one of the more interesting stories in the entire NFL. I'm really interested in following it. But regardless, this is not the same team that it is with Jameis Winston at quarterback. Your other teams battling for that last playoff spot in the NFC are Carolina, which they pulled out a win over Atlanta today. which I don't know, pulling out a win over Atlanta, I'm not sure if that really screams playoff team. Sam Darnold left the game with a concussion. Sam Darnold has not looked remotely like a professional quarterback since Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Christian McCaffrey is on IR, can come back, I believe, after next week. But regardless, this is a Carolina team that is not inspiring any confidence. The Minnesota Vikings are right at the edge of that playoff line. They were unable to beat Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys tonight, and managed just 16 points against the Cowboy defense. San Francisco needed a miracle, a big-time second-half comeback just to beat Chicago today. The Bears could consider themselves in that playoff spot. That's a lot of teams that don't inspire a lot of confidence. And so you look at where the Seahawks are, coming off a nice win over Jacksonville, which you got to win by a lot for it to be a nice win over Jacksonville. But a 31-7, everything looked good. Geno had his best game of the season by far. And I think now we can do kind of the post-mortem on Geno Smith, right? In the sense that all signs seem to point to Russ coming back after the bye week and playing against Green Bay next week. So you can start to, okay, we're done with the Geno Smith experiment. How did this go? And honestly, I think his performance was better than I expected. I think it was better than a lot of people expected. The results weren't good. I think it had more to do with things outside of his control. He had chances to win the game in each of the games he lost. That's absolutely true. And that's where Russell Wilson bails you out every time, and Pete Carroll has counted on that for a decade. And Geno Smith is not going to bail you out in those situations. But in terms of particularly his pre-snap reads, the way he got the team organized, I thought was really impressive, and he did so today. Second or third play of the game came up, gave an alert call, switched to a run, then it was a 10, 12-yard run for Alex Collins. And he did quite a bit of that. When he was under pressure, had to make quicker decisions. He took a lot of bad sacks. Those are the things that separate him from being someone who's a consistent NFL starter and someone who, can play, right? And you can put him in and he can play, and he might draw interest from a desperate team or two this offseason who's looking for someone to maybe fill in a gap. So I think he did well for himself despite only winning one game. He made some nice throws today. The touchdown pass to DK was something that we need to do so much more of as a Seahawks team, which is just throw him up a ball and give him a chance to make a play, which is exactly what they did down by the goal line. He threw a couple balls over the top of linebackers or corners and underneath safeties that Tyler Lockett was able to make plays on. Those are the kind of throws that are above elementary level NFL throws, right? Those are difficult throws to make. With time to throw, he has been able to make them. When he has been under pressure, he's been a pretty bargain basement level NFL quarterback, which is what I think you expect from a backup quarterback and the guy that's been backing up Russell Wilson for so long, who you're not putting a lot of investment into, who you don't expect to get a lot out of. I think for years, Seahawks fans have pretty collectively thought, man, I mean, if Russell Wilson gets hurt, our season's screwed. I don't think the season is screwed at this point. I think that they're still just fine in that NFC playoff picture because you can't have a lot of confidence in any of the teams they're trying to catch. So that'll be really, really interesting to watch going forward as they move through the bye week, see what happens with the teams in front of them. Other results that are really interesting today, Pittsburgh and Cleveland playing. Those are two teams battling with Baltimore atop the AFC North. All four of those teams, actually. You got Cincinnati in there, too. This was not a division that I think people had their eyes on as maybe the top division in the NFL going into the season. The NFC West, I think, was what you had to be, and 2 weeks through was a 7-1 division. San Francisco and Seattle not playing up to what you would expect from them since then. But a brutal 15-10 game, late touchdown. Big Ben puts it in the back of the end zone for him. Pittsburgh is only going to win games this way. It's how they beat Seattle in Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago, and they're simply not going to be a 30-point offense team. Their offense is not in a position where they can do that, and it's because they're so limited in terms of throwing the ball down the field that you simply can't. You're not concerned about Big Ben throwing the ball more than 30 yards down the field because the guy can't. He had the Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago. Pitchers who get Tommy John at 36, you don't have a lot of confidence in. Nonetheless, quarterbacks at his age, and it's shown that they have a good defense, and they can potentially still ride that into a playoff position, but the upside on this team seems really severely capped. Able to get a win over Cleveland today. Cleveland playing with Baker Mayfield, who, of course, didn't play last week. Still, he's battling with that nasty shoulder injury. Didn't turn the ball over today, but this is a team, again, these are two teams that are limited, that have limited ceilings because of who's playing quarterback for them. Baker limits Cleveland because they can't have an explosive downfield passing game because he holds on to the ball so much. And when he reins it in and doesn't turn the ball over like he did today, he's also not going to have any explosive plays. You trade a couple of the explosive plays for the lack of boneheaded decisions and turnovers. Today they made that trade and only ended up with 10 points. Nick Chubb held to 61 yards. Najee Harris was the difference. He had a touchdown for Pittsburgh, and it was Pittsburgh able to get the running game going more and win the ball game because of it. Other results in that afternoon window, all the games seemed to really come down to it at the end. New England getting a win over the Chargers. I was starting to get aboard the Charger train and the Justin Herbert train. And then New England doused cold water all over that today. A bizarre interception from Justin Herbert. Just threw it well behind his receiver, who wasn't even really looking at him. It was running back running an angle route out of the backfield. Completely missed it. Pick six for New England, and that took the game over. And a huge win for New England to keep them in the playoff hunt. The AFC picture is interesting because you've got, in a similar, you could almost think of the Seahawks this way. You've got a couple teams lurking in the AFC because the Chiefs have been off to such a slow start. You have to think that they're going to turn it on at some point. So there's a team that's sitting actually outside the playoff picture that you still consider a team that's going to make a run. You consider how well the AFC North is playing as a whole. It really spells a lot of trouble for a team like New England or a team like Indianapolis that really needed that win against Tennessee today, now 3 games back in the South. Those are teams that are going to really have a tough time getting into the playoffs with only 8 or 9 wins when you've got the entire AFC North, Kansas City, the Chargers, the Raiders. A lot of teams are going to be in the mix, and so a team like New England is going to have to do a lot better than 8 or 9 wins. And so they're going to have to be a different team than the team they have been so far this season. San Francisco, again, needed a miracle comeback. I don't know if miracle is the right word, I guess, but they were well down in that ball game. A poor first half. But Jimmy Garoppolo, this is your stat of the day that nobody saw coming. You put money on this in Vegas, you were walking away a winner. 2 rushing touchdowns today for Jimmy Garoppolo. Nobody saw that coming. What people did see coming was a rushing touchdown today for Justin Fields, one of the plays of the year. Reversing field going right, reversing field coming all the way back. It looked almost like that famous Steve Young touchdown run. He covered a lot of ground to go 23 yards. Big-time touchdown. Almost won the game for Chicago. Huge win for San Francisco, similar to the win for Seattle today. Kind of keeps their hopes alive. They're 3-4, again, in a messy NFC playoff picture. Gives them hope. The defense gave up 22 points to a Chicago offense that at times this season has looked absolutely abysmal. And so you were hoping, I think, as a San Francisco fan, that they would do what Seattle did to Jacksonville today, which was completely shut them down, make the offense look completely hopeless. That didn't happen today, and so it'll be interesting to see if that San Francisco defense can become the one that a couple of years ago was the best in the league and almost carried them to a Super Bowl victory. We're not seeing that at the moment, and that makes it difficult for me to believe that they're going to be a real legitimate playoff contender when you don't have a dynamic quarterback on one side of the ball and you don't have the same playmaking defensive front that they had a couple of years ago. You have Mr. Bosa, but beside him, they really don't have a ton on the defensive front that are out there making the big time plays that you need when your offense isn't making those sorts of plays. I talked about Tennessee picking up that big overtime win. Carson Wentz with a couple really bad interceptions. Though I would argue the interception down near the goal line, on his own goal line, where he tried to throw it left-handed and get it out of the end zone, turned into a pick six for Tennessee, was honestly the better play. He needed to get the ball out and not take the safety. But once he was in the grasp and it was going to be a safety unless he got rid of the ball, the pick six, actually, it gives the ball back to Indianapolis. and therefore makes it the better play. Taking the safety there, then they need to punt the ball back to Tennessee, and they're not going to see the ball again. So that was honestly the better play. Gave Indianapolis a chance. He drove them down and tied that game and forced overtime. It was in overtime that they were unable to make it happen. A huge win for Tennessee. Taking control of the South. And in another game where Derrick Henry was not the guy, he didn't have the giant stats that he had through the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Since he had that Monday night game against Buffalo where he basically single-handedly willed them to the victory and was on pace to break that rushing record, last couple games, I think it was 80 yards last week, it was 60 yards this week, no touchdowns. He did throw one last week. Hasn't been that guy, which is because no one's scared of Tannehill throwing the football, even when he has A.J. Brown and Julio Jones to throw to. They put up for 34 points today, and that means Tannehill was able to step up, make some big-time plays. If Tannehill can play, he doesn't need to play like a top-5 quarterback. He doesn't need to be Aaron Rodgers, right? But he does need to play like a guy who can win a Super Bowl, right? Jimmy Garoppolo almost won a Super Bowl as a quarterback, right? Different guys. Jared Goff almost won a Super Bowl. You can win a Super Bowl with a second-tier quarterback, and Ryan Tannehill needs to be a second-tier guy for them to have legitimate Super Bowl hopes with the rest of this team. He played like that today. If he continues to play like that, they can be as good as anyone in the AFC. New Orleans, probably with the most surprising, second most surprising win of the day. We'll get to the Bengals and the Jets. Second most surprising win of the day, beating New Orleans with Trevor Siemian at quarterback. And that was New Orleans beating Tampa Bay, I should say. Really surprising because Tampa Bay had the ball with 2 minutes to go, a couple timeouts. Brady's got the ball. You think it's over, right? They only needed a field goal. You just expect at that point, with I think a minute 40 left for Tom Brady to win the football game. And the fact that his first throw was not good, right, nearly intercepted, and then his second throw was intercepted. They tried to run crossing routes over the middle. You could actually see in the broadcast him and Byron Leftwich a couple minutes before talking about wanting to run that crossing route play, and New Orleans was all over it. He wanted Godwin to cut in front of the safety, actually quite similarly to the interception that happened in Seattle's game, where Trevor Lawrence wanted his receiver to cut in front of Quandre Diggs. Diggs jumped the route, and he could have cut in front. Diggs was all over the play. Exact same thing in this game, where I believe it was Godwin didn't get in front of the safety, but it didn't matter because the safety was all over that ball, and there was really no chance of succeeding on that throw. So huge win for New Orleans. What's going to be interesting now in the second half of the season is if they think they can catch Tampa Bay or hang on to maybe the second wildcard spot behind the Rams. Is it Trevor Siemian? Is it Taysom Hill who's playing quarterback, and can you actually count on them to win you 5 or 6 more games this season because you don't have Jameis Winston the rest of the way? That's going to be fascinating to watch. I don't have a lot of faith. I have no faith in Taysom Hill. I have more faith in Trevor Siemian than I expected to have. He looked solid today. He ripped off some really good throws. He had more arm strength than I remembered him having when he was in Denver. So there were some impressive throws that he made late in that game. Really ripped a couple over the middle on that last drive. If he can continue to do that, then this is a New Orleans team that you can still get behind, that I wouldn't be in too much despair as a New Orleans Saints fan. However, we always know once you give defensive coordinators in the NFL a couple weeks to watch a guy, a couple weeks of film, things can change quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Last couple results to talk about. I don't know how the heck New York beat Cincinnati today. I don't really even know what to say about it other than I never heard of Mike White before 2 weeks ago, and I pride myself on knowing pretty much all the quarterbacks that are coming out of college. No idea who Mike White was. And he leads the New York Jets to a victory over a Cincinnati team that I had started to buy into. I had started to decide that Cincinnati was actually good. And then they lay an absolute stinker today after beating up Baltimore pretty good last week, for playing with Green Bay in a game that they probably could have won, probably should have won. Absolute stinker today against the Jets. And if Mike White, if you want to pick up Mike White in your fantasy team, I don't think he's going to play another game like that the rest of his life. If he does, I'll eat my words, but nobody saw that coming. And then Cooper Rush, another guy I had never heard of. I still thought Andy Dalton was their backup. He leads the late touchdown drive against Minnesota, and Kirk Cousins losing to Cooper Rush, a lot's been said about the the salary that Kirk Cousins makes, the guaranteed contract. Was it worth it? You don't pay a guy as much as you're paying Kirk Cousins to lose to Cooper Rush, to only score 16 points against the Dallas defense. It doesn't all fall on him. Minnesota's stuck in a similar position, I think, to what Seattle is, in that the overarching structure that their head coach provides, being a defensive-oriented, conservative-minded play caller, restricts their offense in the same way that it does to Seattle. And so you can't lay all the blame at Kirk Cousins' feet at the same time. You have to do better than 16 points in a nearly must-win game like this one. And you got handed a golden opportunity with Dak not playing tonight and weren't able to take advantage. Dallas puts themselves, with the defensive performance tonight, kind of in that position now where they're up there with the best teams in the NFC. And if they should have Dak back next week. But if their defense can play like this, which I didn't think that they had this good a defense, if they can continue to play like this, they're just as much a contender as anybody else in the NFC. That's we will have Kansas City will destroy the New York Giants tomorrow night, and I'll have a look ahead later in the week to the next week in the NFL season and reassess kind of we're nearing that midway point of the season, where we're at in terms of the playoff race and where teams are going in this now 18-week, 17-game NFL season for the first time. But that's the Sunday recap. If you've got any questions, of course, drop them in the comments. Would love to answer them on the show. If you've got things you want me to talk about, all for it. The listener engagement, absolutely want to be there. Go to the World Series, Game 5 tonight. Houston keeps it alive, 9-5 win over Atlanta. The bats got it together. Atlanta jumps out grand slam in the first inning, and you have to think that entire ballpark is thinking, here it is, we're going to do it tonight. Jump out to the 4-0 lead. And Houston brings the bats. And by the third inning, this game's tied again. Atlanta took the lead again 5-4. But it was the Houston bats that kept coming and kept coming. Atlanta had to dig really deep into their bullpen. This is a tired Atlanta bullpen at this point. Remember, in the game 1, they had to throw the bullpen for 6 2/3 because of their starting pitcher getting hurt. And you can see that fatigue starting to wear on them as they threw the bullpen quite a bit again tonight. If I take a look at exactly how much they threw that bullpen, they threw 5 different pitchers tonight, and that's only because they threw Smiley the last 3 innings. So again, they kind of went with the opener. Davidson gave up 2 early, and it was Minter in the 5th where Houston really blew things open. But again, having to throw 5 different pitchers, you're wearing out that bullpen, even if it's the postseason and you're probably carrying more guys because you don't need to carry as many starters. That's got to be a massive concern for them going forward. Houston gets the series back to Minute Maid now, which is huge. You still got to win 2 more, but you get the series back to your home ballpark where you may or may not have cameras in the outfield, you get to stay alive. Atlanta doesn't get to win it at home. You kind of take that edge off them, especially the way they started the game with the grand slam, had all the momentum going. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams do in terms of the starting pitching, right? Because we've seen this in these whole playoffs, and especially in this World Series, how teams are basically just throwing everything against the wall. We haven't seen very many long starts. We'll see if someone rises to the occasion in Game 6 or 7. Maybe one of the guys that pitched so well in Game 3 and can take care of things and put the team on their back and win a ball game in one of these last 2. I still think Atlanta's going to take care of it on Tuesday night, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to do a college football recap and look ahead, hopefully on Monday night, and do an NFL look ahead at the end of the week. I'll mix in some NBA at some point this week. And then we got college basketball starting up at 2. I'll look to do that in the next couple weeks as well. Hopefully just make this kind of a, probably video is not this long, but, an NFL Sunday is an NFL Sunday. And try to, just get these recap videos out there 3-4 times a week. Please, subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. On Instagram, I'm at BrashMaster.
It's
BRASH and then Master. And Twitter is the same thing, @BrashMaster. I'm Justin Brasher. Thank you very much, you guys, for watching, and see you next time.